100 lucky customers will receive $1,400 free credit. Buy a Prime bundle or top up now to enter. Digicel, better together.
This is the news on top of the hour.
Live from our studio in Georgetown.
Kaieteur Radio, 99.1 FM.
Good evening. Thank you for tuning in to Kaieteur Radio. Kevin Smith here with your nightly newscast. Before we get to the news in detail, let's get to today's front page comment of the Kaieteur News. Our leadership is blind on Exxon's escalating costs. Our leaders have made many costly past mistakes with our oil. Instead of learning from those mistakes and working tirelessly to correct them, our leaders continue to walk the same wretched path. The coalition leaders had approved a provision which said that Guyana would accept a measly 2% take for all of the oil to be produced in the Stabroek Block. Several world-class experts advised them to increase this to 10 or 12%, but the coalition ignored this advice. The PPP is doing the same. PPP leaders had the opportunity to wield a menacing sword over Exxon's head and squeeze the company where it hurts when the company desperately needed approval for the Payara project, the third to be developed on the Stabroek Block. But it let the opportunity slip through its fingers. It refused to use other opportunities when granting permits and approving other projects as bargaining chips for better contract terms for Guyanese. Our leaders had Exxon bent over their laps and did absolutely nothing to benefit Guyanese handsomely. The reverse occurred, with Exxon dropping the cash hammer on us through increasing costs. Liza 1 started with $3.5 billion US. Liza 2 went on to $6 billion US, 70% or more, and Payara expenses currently are estimated at $9 billion US, over 250% of Liza Phase 1 expenses and 50% of Liza 2. The oil companies are having a feast while thinking of Guyanese as dumb and foolish. As our leaders refuse to claw back value, do an independent review of our resources, provided studies of the gas to shore project to be landed at Wales, leave key projects without comprehensive or full insurance, among other things, we are left vulnerable to massive scales of abuse. Our leaders need to stop being so blind, dumb, and foolish. If they don't act differently, all of Guyana will be doomed with our resources. And now for the news in detail. Following ExxonMobil's announcement on Tuesday that it suffered a $20 billion US loss during the fourth quarter of 2020, along with revelations that it has launched a new company to spearhead its solutions on emissions reductions, unimpressed shareholders are quickly to register their frustration and discontent, specifically making its dissatisfaction known was Engine Number 1, a new investment firm that seeks to enhance long-term value through active ownership and which will soon be nominating 4 highly qualified independent director candidates to the ExxonMobil board of directors. In a statement to the press, Engine Number 1 said that the board that has underperformed this dramatically and defied shareholder sentiment for this long has not earned the right to choose its own new in the face of calls for change. And moving on, coming from CNBC, the CEOs of Chevron and ExxonMobil last year discussed the possibility of merging the two companies, the Wall Street Journal reported Sunday, citing unnamed people familiar with the talks. The newspaper reported that Chevron CEO Michael Rith and Exxon CEO Darren Woods spoke about the prospect after the COVID-19 pandemic began to negatively impact the oil prices. The talks are not ongoing and were described as preliminary, according to the journal. Representatives from the two companies declined to comment. The talks were later reported by Reuters. And moving on, Minister of Education Priya Manik Chand read the Riot Act to contractors currently engaged in projects at the University of Guyana over their tardiness. At the time, the minister and a team were visiting the UG Turkine campus for a first-hand view of several ongoing projects. Upon being told of the various projects, the minister warned the contractors to finish within the contractual timeline or face possible contract termination. In a release from the Ministry of Education, it was noted that Manik Chand, who was also joined by the university's vice-chancellor, met with 3 of the 4 contractors executing works on the campus. In an engagement with the contractors, she reminded them of the government's firm stance against defaulting contractors and stated that she was dissatisfied with the non-completion of the 3 projects. And now let's tell you the reopening of movie theaters was among the issues addressed by the Minister of Health, Dr. Frank Anthony. Today, Dr. Anthony was questioned about the delay in reopening the cinemas, given that a number of other businesses, including bars, have been approved for reopening. But Minister Anthony made it clear that indoor environments are risky places to be during the COVID-19 pandemic, since there is a high chance of persons contracting the virus. In further expounding, he said that if persons are in crowded indoor cinema, it will pose a public health hazard. And moving on, ExxonMobil paid $5.6 billion in income taxes last year, accounting for its global operations. This was revealed during its 2020 Q4 earnings call yesterday. Exxon's 2020 income tax expenses amount to nearly 4 times Guyana's 2020 budget. But Guyana received nothing from ExxonMobil, its partners, affiliates, and subcontractors in income taxes. This is because former Minister of Natural Resources Raffle Trotman negotiated a contract for the Stabroek Block operations which grant them a permanent tax waiver of all taxes. And now let's tell you, a group of 135 investors formally cemented their intention to bring massive changes to ExxonMobil by launching yesterday the coalition United for a Responsible Cure, abbreviated as CURE. It is understood that CURE represents a broad spectrum of stakeholders who are focused on sustainability and delivering long-term returns that account for the realities of a changing energy sector. As of today, CURE's over 135 members collectively represent over $2.2 trillion in asset. Before we move on to the next story, I'd like to make a small correction. The coalition is called the Coalition United for a Responsible Exxon. And now let's tell you, with aims of resolving the flaring that is currently ongoing offshore Guyana by ExxonMobil, newly appointed EPA Director Sharifa Razak is looking to enforce provisions in the Liza 1 environmental permit in future developments. The provision Razak was referring to is Article 313 of the Liza 1 environmental permit, which makes it explicitly clear that Exxon must have spare equipment available to cater for any sudden malfunctions. However, the provision is ambiguous as it does not definitively state that the oil company must have spare equipment on hand. And that brings us to the end of this evening's newscast. I am Kevin Smith. Thank you for listening. Coming up next is the National Outlook with GHK Lal.
Want value for your advertising dollar? Then place your ads on Kaieteur Radio's newscasts. Streamed live on 6 different mediums, reaching hundreds of thousands. Advertise today and watch your dollar grow. Call us on 225-8465 or 226-8210 today.